It was late September when I first started putting up the Halloween decorations. I've always loved this time of year, ever since I was a kid. The cool autumn air, the changing leaves, and the spooky vibe that takes over as Halloween approaches. As an adult, I go all out with my decorations. I'm that house in the neighborhood that people talk about, with the huge spider webs covering the bushes, the fog machines creating an eerie mist, and of course the life-size characters placed strategically throughout the yard. When I started seeing the Halloween stuff hit the stores back in August, I just couldn't resist buying a few new pieces to add to my collection. I found an amazing deal online for a set of 3 motion-activated characters: a Grim Reaper, a demented clown, and a werewolf. When you walk by them, they are triggered to move and make sounds. I envisioned placing them along the walkway to my front door, so they would menacingly turn their heads and growl at anyone coming up to the house. It would be such a creepy effect, perfect for scaring the trick-or-treaters on Halloween night. Setting up all the decorations took me nearly 2 full weekends. I started with the classic cobwebs and jack-o'-lanterns, then gradually worked my way up to the more elaborate pieces. The motion-activated characters were the finishing touch. I carefully positioned them spaced out along the front walkway. As I tested each one, I felt that tingle of excitement as they menacingly moved and moaned. It was all coming together perfectly. In the week leading up to Halloween, I spent every night sitting out on the front porch to watch excited kids and parents walk by to admire my handiwork. I scared quite a few people with my jumping spider that dropped down from the awning when they got close enough. Seeing everyone's reactions, I just knew Halloween night was going to be one to remember. But then I started to notice something strange with the motion-activated characters. During the day when no one was around, I could have sworn I saw them move out of the corner of my eye as I left for work or pulled into the driveway. Just subtle shifts in their poses, like the werewolf's arm moving or the clown slowly turning its head. I told myself it must be a glitch with the sensors, even though they weren't supposed to activate without detecting motion. The night before Halloween, I was kept awake by a terrible thunderstorm. I tossed and turned listening to the raging wind and booming thunder for hours. When I finally glanced at the clock and saw it was 3 a.m., I knew I wasn't getting any more sleep. On a whim, I decided to go check on the Halloween decorations, worried something might get damaged or blown over in the storm. As I walked cautiously from room to room, turning on lights, I kept picturing the clown character sneaking up behind me. I shook off the paranoid thought with a nervous laugh. When I peered out the front door, what I saw made my blood turn to ice. The decorations were still standing, but they were all facing directly at the house. I swore they had been facing the street when I set them up. Even accounting for the howling wind, there was no way they could have neatly pivoted in unison like that. It was as if they had turned themselves. Just then a crack of thunder boomed so loud it shook the house, and I jumped back from the door with a yelp. I didn't dare go outside to investigate in the middle of the storm. Instead, I retreated to the couch and anxiously watched the decorations through the window as the hours crawled by until sunrise. They remained frozen in that same position, staring at the house no matter how hard the rain pounded. I decided maybe I had simply imagined the change in their positioning. Once the sun was up, I suited up in my rain boots and raincoat and tentatively walked outside to adjust them back toward the street. As I approached each character, a chill ran down my spine. Up close, their stillness seemed unnatural as they loomed over me. I could have sworn their eyes actually followed me as I briskly rearranged them and rushed back inside. Later that day, the rain finally stopped, and the clouds began to clear just in time for Halloween. As soon as it got dark, costumed children began flocking to my house. I loved seeing the looks of fright and delight as kids bravely made their way through the fog and strobe lights to get their candy. From my porch, I controlled a few last-minute scares, making a skeleton pop up from behind a bush or triggering a scream from a hidden speaker. I must have gone through 5 bags of candy that night. After the streets quieted down, I started turning off all the effects and taking down some of the less sturdy decorations in preparation for the windy night ahead. As I bent down to unplug the fog machine, I heard an odd giggle. It sounded like a creepy child, but no kids remained outside. I paused and listened closely. Nothing. Then just as I stood, I heard it again, a mocking laugh coming from the direction of the werewolf figure. But that was impossible, right? I stared hard at the werewolf, waiting to see if it would move. It remained frozen, its torso twisted gruesomely, claws dripping with blood. As I stepped cautiously toward it, the clown character suddenly tilted its head up and looked directly at me. I gasped, stumbling backward. Its eyes, now glowing red, stayed locked on mine with an unmistakable glare of evil intent. I wanted desperately to flee into the house, but could not tear my gaze away from the nightmarish scene unfolding in my own front yard. The Grim Reaper slowly turned to face me, raising its arm and pointing one bony finger right at me. An inhuman growl came from the werewolf, its jaws snapping open and closed. My terror rising, I finally managed to break eye contact and whip my head around to run, but I was stopped short by the sight of all the jack-o'-lanterns now sporting ghastly fanged grimaces instead of triangle eyes and noses. Even the fake tombstones had shifted to feature disturbing epitaphs. The message was clear: there was no escape. I'm ashamed to admit that I sank down right there in the yard and wept like a child. The deranged chorus of laughs coming from the Halloween decorations mocked my terror. I truly believed I was losing my mind. Suddenly, a bright light washed over me. I looked up through tear-filled eyes to see a police cruiser pulling up in front of the house, its red and blue lights flashing. The decorations had all returned to their normal positions. 2 officers got out and approached me cautiously. "Sir, are you all right? We got calls from the neighborhood about screaming coming from this house," said one officer. I don't know what's happening here. My decorations, they all moved." The werewolf turned its head and I heard a voice. I trailed off, realizing how unhinged I sounded. The officers shared a concerned look. "Have you been drinking tonight, sir?" asked the other officer. I quickly shook my head. Of course, they didn't believe me. Claiming decorations came to life and moved on their own? It was absurd. The officers suggested I get some rest and offered to escort me safely inside. I thanked them numbly and agreed, though I knew there would be no sleeping that night. After checking the house and yard, they reassured me everything seemed fine and left. I turned off the remaining lights and props, tore down the rest of the decorations, and went inside. I sat rigidly on the couch, watching sitcom reruns, too frightened to move even just to use the bathroom or get a drink. As the sun's earliest rays began peeking through, I finally allowed myself to doze off from sheer exhaustion. 3 hours of fitful sleep later, I was jolted awake by a loud clatter coming from the backyard. I leaped up, expecting to see one of those menacing characters tapping and pawing at the glass door, but it was just the wind kicking up some stray debris. Though it was a struggle, I managed to push through the lack of sleep to board up the entire interior of the house that day. There was no way I could stay another night otherwise. After that, I ransacked the garage to find every padlock, latch, and chain I could to seal myself in. It looked like the home of a paranoid lunatic, but I didn't care. I positioned myself in the living room with food, water, and a baseball bat, prepared to stand guard. But the night passed uneventfully, if not peacefully. As soon as the sun peeked up, I headed out to start disposing of all the Halloween decorations. I wasn't taking any chances of them rising up again. I half expected to find them moved around, but they seemed inert and harmless in the light of day. I made trip after trip to dump every single mask, prop, inflatable, and plastic character into the metal trash bins behind a local grocery store. Only once they were all gone and buried deep in the landfill did I finally start to feel safe again in my own home. But I still couldn't shake the bone-chilling memories of Halloween night. Had it just been an extremely vivid, sleep-deprived hallucination triggered by a creepy thunderstorm, or was there actually something more sinister at play? I'm hoping as more time passes, the unsettling images will fade, and I'll convince myself it was all in my head. My neighbors already think I'm the weird Halloween guy after refusing to put up any decorations this year. I tried to make excuses when they asked, saying I was too busy with work. But the truth is, I don't know if I can ever celebrate the holiday the same way after what I experienced. Even now, I occasionally catch myself glancing warily at a lawn ornament in someone's yard, half expecting to see it move. Anytime I'm out walking in my neighborhood and sense something behind me, I pick up my pace, imagining it's one of those characters come to life stalking me. I haven't seen anything out of the ordinary since that night, yet I still can't seem to shake the lingering sense of dread. I wonder if I'll ever know what really happened to make those Halloween decorations seem alive. Sometimes not knowing is even more terrifying. This will haunt me far beyond any holiday.